Hi, my name is Paul Arnold and I'm a qualified psychotherapist and a trained coach. And today's session is all about improving the quality of our relationships. And this is a huge topic. And I can only sort of just scratch the surface of it. And I'm going to give you a little bit of theory and some strategies and tips. And those strategies and tips are more large, behavioral, cognitive in their nature, but actually it's the psychotherapeutic space, which is where we can really help to dig deep into what's going on at the relational level, because very often these come from deeply held emotional spaces from our childhood, and I'll come on to that in a little while. So let's start digging in the topic of improving the quality of our relationships. You know what? Relationships give us the greatest joys in our life. And they also give us our greatest stresses and sadness within our lives. And very often, it's the relationship that is most prevalently discussed in the psychotherapeutic room. The relationship they have with significant others, be it their parents, be it their siblings, be it their partner, be it work colleagues. Because this is what really gets underneath us, And one of the most common things is, why do I keep repeating that same type of relationship with that same type of person? Look, there's been so much work in the theory of relationships, and particularly the work done by Bowlby, Main, Ainsworth, etc., in the field of attachment patterns that we have. And we know that from our very earliest relationship with our parent and our key primary caregiver, that this basically shaped how we became in other relationships. And basically they're like four different types. It's about 50% of people who had what Winnicott called a good enough mother. And let's take mother as being just the holding space for any caregiver who's there. But actually with that, because we had proper what's called affect attunement, emotional regulation, actually we felt safe in that space. We felt held. And therefore we have a secure attachment pattern. That's about 50%. Then about 25% people had, a dysregulating experience with their primary caregiver. And they learned it was too painful. And basically they went into what's called a sort of more avoidant, a more dismissing style. They don't want to go there, so therefore they pull out of relationships. And you've often seen this in your own experience. They are, they don't share that much. Their emotions are hidden away. They do things by themselves. You don't feel as needed in that relationship. And then we've then got another type, which is, when again the mother has been less available, and actually makes the child become more ambivalent, more preoccupied, what I call more needy, more clingy. They're desperate to get that love and that approbation, and they go after it. And that pattern happens to then repeat again in relationships. So when we got two people, one who is, shall we say, avoidant, don't like too close to emotions, and the other is very needy, we see that dance across the room where one's like, feeling rejected, going after the other person feels suffocated and pulls away from that stuff. So very earliest attachment patterns shape the way that we are in our future relationships. And therefore we often replicate, and in many cases reenact. Freud talks about old wine in new skins. And we're often trying to it's a safe place, it's a known place for us. And very often we're trying to get a better solution, we're trying to work it out. So that's why we do repeat those same relationships. So in that sense, what we've got to do is we've got to come strong in ourselves. Not to be over-reliant on another person to make us whole. and to realize that what's gone on in us in the past has shaped the way that we are in relationships. And only by the recognition and the understanding of that can we accept it and allow ourselves to move on and explore new strategies. Gabor Mate, the very famous Hungarian psychotherapist, talked about this idea: we cannot expect a wife to become a surrogate mother. That was not what she signed up for. And take the same principle for the husband as well. And I think there's something about what is the role of the relationship. A very good friend of mine, when he married, he and his partner both made a pledge to each other: I will help support you become the best version of who you want to be. And I think that's what it's about. It's a shared path. And it's not about you needing to become, my surrogate helper to help me become a full, whole person. It's us both having an independent, strong sense of self, and we both walk along a path together. So strategies, tips, advice on this. I think there's really important that there's a clarity about what our needs are. And auditing, are our needs being met? Very often in relationships, we can sometimes find that one person's needs are not being met and the other person, lets their needs go. Well, that's not an equal, fair relationship. So how can we express our needs and allow them to be heard? And very often, Byrne talks about games people play. Very often there are sort of trigger points, and we then go into set patterns of behavior. Once we can identify those, we're then in control to say, I'm not playing that, I'm not doing that. That doesn't take us to the right place. And I think the most important thing is we need to have openness and honesty and courage in the relationship to be able to talk and say how we feel. A very good friend of mine, he has with his wife a kitchen floor conversation where they both sit on the kitchen floor as a metaphor of this is base level, where the person who calls the kitchen floor conversation is allowed to say what they want to say. This is what I saw, this is what I heard, this is how you made me feel. And the other person's role at that point is really only to acknowledge and feed back what the other person said. It's not to go and place a defense. It's to let's acknowledge another person. Not try to defend it, not try to say, yeah, but you did X. But just hear where a person is. That's the most powerful thing we can give anyone, is acknowledgement of where they are right now. Now, clearly the role of psychotherapy can be a massively important role, because we can start to dig into what's the root cause of the relationship issues. What makes you act in relationships the way you do? And then once we looked at that, then we can help to explore alternate, healthier strategies. Anyway, I hope that helps, and good luck with your relationships. Take care.